Spring has sprung, and apparently that means all you filthy types who like to have bald downstairs parts are now going to shave your knackers. Now, I think it's a bit wrong, this, right? Because if you are quite happy with pubic hair in the winter to keep your balls warm, I think it's a little bit hypocritical of you to turn around now and say, look at this, I've got a basted turkey ready for you. But that's apparently what a lot of you do. And if you're going to do it, there's only really one product you can use to do that, and that is, of course, Manscaped. And you'll get 20% off and free shipping at Manscaped if you use the code Rangers. Just go to manscaped.com. They are, as you know, the best in their ball care bundle. When I'm taking care of my balls, I get told to take my hands out my trousers. It's wrong, I tell you. But it is. It's got everything. The Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker, the ear and nose hair trimmer, and trust me, we do all need those. The Crop Preserver bald... Oh, Jesus Christ. The Crop Reviver... Reviver? Toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. The Lawnmower trimmer is an elite electric trimmer that provides a proprietary advanced skin-safe technology, because nobody wants... God almighty, can you imagine getting a nick down there? Jesus, oh my God. And you really couldn't go to your work nurse and ask her to put a plaster on it. I mean, you get in trouble for that these days. But it's waterproof and supplied with an LED light. So high technology perversion. I love all this stuff. But yes, go to manscaped.com and type in the code Rangers. You'll get 20% off and free shipping, and you'll be walking about with testicles as fresh as a summer morn. Hello everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar. I am your host as always, and joining me this weekend to discuss Rangers' 5-2 victory over St Mirren, and maybe to look a little bit ahead to what that might tell us for next season, both good and bad, is first of all the Sage of Salkits. It's Andy McGowan.
Hello David, hello folks.
I see you've been making friends on social media again this weekend.
Well, do you know what? I'm on a, what do they call it? A no Fox tour giving, or no Fox giving tour. That's what I'm on just now. I'm fed up trying to be pals with everybody. I'm just going to say it.
You just got to say it as it is.
I'm going to become Bill Leckie, basically.
Oh, for fuck. No. Well, in that case, right, to be Bill Leckie, you need to be quite lonely. So does that mean that your wife's going to be single? Because she's very attractive. So, just send her my way for comforting.
If I'm going to go for something, I go for it full-hearted. So whatever it takes to become Bill Leckie, I'll become Bill Leckie, mate.
It'll take you about 4 stone, a pair of Converse, and walking in the rain after you've been divorced. But also joining us to discuss the game at the weekend, it's the ultimate original Rangers da. It's Alan Bradley.
Am I on the right call here? I'm not so sure. All this Bill Leckie, Andy's. The only reason I came on, David, I mean, I know you're good, without a doubt, but Andy, Dad a postman, me an ex-postman, I thought we were going to get some real quality. What's happening?
It's him. He said it himself. He's changed. We used to bring him on for his authoritative takes on all things Rangers, and now here he is trying to pimp his wife out to me. It's a disgrace. It's not on. So I'm gonna remember our Presbyterian background, lads, and take us straight back to Saturday afternoon. Andy, we have entered that stage of the season where we can't win the league, and therefore the intensity does drop in games. And I'll be honest, for large parts of the game at the weekend, I felt that from the crowd, some of the players. The players who we're going to talk about are the ones who maybe aren't feeling that at the moment. Is that an inevitable thing that will happen at this time of year when the league goes? And really, yeah, everybody's looking to one game now as being, the big one, the testing game. And I suppose it is inevitable, but equally, they do need to finish the season on a high. That is something that I think the manager sort of spoke about after the game, that there were times he wasn't particularly happy with what he was watching.
Nah, I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, as you know. There'll be folk listening to this expect me to say, yeah, we can still win it, if it's not mathematically impossible.
No, we can't.
But we can't, no. And there is a real danger at this time of year that the season just falls off a cliff. We've seen it under Gerrard a couple of times, and it's just dead rubber, as they say. But in saying that, I thought the tempo was quite good on Saturday. I thought the crowd was reasonable as well. So it was heartening to see that was still the case. But I do think that your point there, David, is bang on, that there's a subtext to it, which is obviously that we've got one game to wouldn't quite save our season, but it would give us some much needed hope and point towards aspirations that we're holding that we really can't say are for certain just now. So everything points towards this semi-final. The momentum has to stay there. I think I said it in the post-match the other week that we need to create momentum up into and including that semi-final. The players should be playing for their places. I don't know if that's going to be really the case. We've got a couple of players there out of contract. I think that there might be a couple of players in the squad that have been told to look for their clubs, going by Bill's comments the other day about the communication within the club. So strange dynamics, not ideal dynamics. You'd like to be going for both the league and the cup, and it would be totally different. But we are where we are. There are some rays of light that we'll probably speak about today. There are some concerns, as always. There's just, I hate to build things up too much, but there's a lot riding on this semi-final just for a hearts and minds perspective as much as a football perspective.
No, I'd agree with that. Alan, I'm going to do something a little unusual in here, which is praise one of the other sides in the SPFL, because St Mirren came to Ibrox, I felt, at the weekend, and they had a go. They played two up front, and they pressed us right from the front line quite often when we were bringing the ball out of defence. They had two up pressing, three up midfield pressing. Now, in terms of an approach to a game, they lose 5-2, right? And people will say, well, look, it's a cuffing in the end up, so it didn't work. They'd have been better off doing what Dundee United did a couple of weeks ago when they came 10 men behind the ball, lost 2-0. I'd argue slightly differently. Dundee United were never, ever going to take anything from that match, right? They were not. They were there to not get cuffed. And they didn't get cuffed, fair enough, but they weren't going to take a point. They weren't going to take 3. 2-2 with 12 minutes left. St Mirren are still in that match. And I just thought that was a far better approach to it. I'm not saying that I want, necessarily teams to be taking points off Rangers, but I just felt that Scottish football as a product would benefit from teams going, do you know what, we'll have a go and we might lose. It's Ibrox. It's a free hit. They're not expected to take anything. And instead they actually gave us a game.
Yeah, I would agree, David. And as you say, they got it right. I remember even, was it in the Cup we played Partick Thistle as well, who actually, it was refreshing but to actually see somebody, and as you say, ultimately it doesn't come down to these teams playing Rangers or say Celtic at Parkhead. It is more the other ones. So why not? And as you say, you got within, 10 minutes or whatever of getting something out of the game. Also, I think tactically they've been doing really well before they came to us. So why not? Do you know what I mean? Because it's far better that than just doing that whole camped in. I mean, I think even Motherwell, did they not play, was it last year or whatever? Was there even one man up? Or so?
The 2 year ago, the Eton game, no, they played a 5-5. Genuinely not. Nothing. It was a 5-5, no man up front, and yeah, I just honest to God, see if teams are coming and coming out and having a go and getting thumped. I get it, I totally do, but there are two sides, and St Mirren are a far better side than Dundee United. You just need a cursory look at the league table to see that. But one came not to get battered and didn't get battered, but never ever threatened to take anything from that football match. St Mirren came at the weekend and were very much like, and listen, at 2 each with 10 minutes left, it was not inconceivable that they might get a winner. So the way that the Rangers were defending, and let's just get straight to that. I'll stay with you first, Alan, on this one. Now, you are of a generation before mine, but our generations, right? We grew up with Rangers defensive rocks, basically, that founded on, and it goes back further. It goes back to the Iron Curtain defence. So yeah, I think we do probably place a premium more on defending, and we've had this amazing run of goalkeepers as we discussed, and I think that we do appreciate that more. And overall this season, the defending has just not been good enough. And you just need to look at some of the goals we've conceded. Now, the manager really was angry. He was really described it as dreadful defending. He described it as a horror show. He said, we lost last week due to 2 defence errors, and then we've given away another 2 goals today. The defending at the first goal was horrific. The defending at the second goal was comedy cuts, I felt. Now, they're both good strikes by O'Hara, so that's true. My problem isn't that he gets the strikes. My problem with both goals are that he's in a position to do it. The first one, nobody closes down, nobody gets out to the players. St Mirren are able to whack in 4 crosses in succession, which shouldn't happen. McGregor doesn't come for the cross, which means Suter is having to head out at one point from about 3 yards out from under his bar. If a goalkeeper just comes and takes that, we're not talking about this attack at all. But it's something that needs rectified next season, because I think we're too easy to score against.
Aye, and you, at the start, you talked about the Rangers' dad. So, I mean, I can go back to Ronnie McKinnon, Jackson, Forsyth. Do you get what I mean? Andy as well, obviously, Terry Butcher. Gough wasn't probably as good a defender as likes of Butcher and some of them, but there was nothing wrong, Davy, with get the thing clear. And there's indecisiveness as well. You think of even the game against Celtic at Ibrox, the getting near the end, we'll kind of try and flick it back to somebody, or we'll get the ball out. The same at Parkhead, the kind of at the last Old Firm game too. For goodness sake, there's nothing actually wrong with just being decisive and one of you just going and clearing it and then going back and facing up. That's the frustration for me. And we do it all the time. Even if it was once in a blue moon, Davy, you'd say, yeah, well, that's, once every couple of months. But it's the fact it's the repetition all of the time that's really pisses me off. And I know they spend so long in terms of coaching this and doing this in patterns of play. But for goodness sake, I don't mean just hump the ball out all the time, but they need to be a lot sharper. And primarily, it needs to be when it's anywhere near the box or whatever, as you say, stop them playing it in, or if it is in there, just be decisive and get the ball out and move things. So, and I think because it's really only down to us and Celtic, as you know, the rest of the league, they've all gone anyway. And that's the thing. I think we've got this kind of scar tissue too, because of the last Old Firm when they won at Parkhead. We've now got another cup final coming up. We just keep giving away goals, Davey. Do you know what I mean?
And that's the thing. You can accept, it's not very pleasant, but you can accept if somebody does something brilliant against you. And then, look, in O'Hara's case with the first goal, it is something brilliant, but he should never, ever be in a position to do that, because, we talk about points of failure in a goal. Could he have done better? There are at least 6 or 7, because that move goes on for a good 30 seconds before it even comes to him for the job. And Rangers should be dealing with it. Any team should be dealing with it before it gets to that stage. Andy, on the point about the goalkeeper, I urge people to go back and watch that first goal, because it's unsavable, right? Not going to go on for that. But like I said, there's one point where the ball comes in and Suter's having to head it from, honestly, he's 3 yards out from his own goal. Any other goalkeeper comes and takes that, right? And like I say, it's a forgotten incident in seconds. But it's not only because he doesn't come and take it that it leads to a goal we're discussing it. It's the fact that we all know, and the defence know, that he doesn't come and take it. So they've got to go deeper. And it invites pressure on us. We absolutely need a goalkeeper who is able to come for crosses. McGregor's never been great at it, but he's completely stopped doing it now. And as I say, the defence know and try to cover for it, but it means that situations that shouldn't be threatening to us are threatening to us, and then compounded by errors. So we need to cut the errors. But I honestly believe a goalkeeper who would come and just take things early would deal with a lot of this, and it would mean the defence could start that 6 yards further forward like they're supposed to.
I think you're right. I mean, I've got a blind spot for McGregor, but you are correct. It isn't the factor, but it is a factor in a lot of these goals that we lose. And it's a big concern for me. I'm not concerned about the recruitment per se this summer. I think we'll probably loosen the purse strings a wee bit, and we'll do some wheeling and dealing between Bosmans and players that are bought, and I think there's a clear vision there. But what does worry me is that to buy a good goalkeeper, to actually buy a goalkeeper and pay a fee for him, you need to pay a lot of money to get what we're used to. And I just wonder what we're thinking there. I know he mentioned Robbie McCrory coming back in the dispatches, but I think it's clear that if we want to go where we want to go, that John McLaughlin isn't quite there. I think he's fine as a reserve goal. I think it'll be a turn.
I agree with you there.
And McGregor is more and more becoming just that wee bit of difference from what he was as a goalkeeper to what we're seeing now. It's so marginal, it's almost indecipherable to if you're watching one game of Rangers every other month, and you probably think there's nothing wrong with McGregor. So this is what worries me. I think I'll be very interested to see what we do, whether we go for, I hate to use the phrase, but the Joe Hart model, where they went out and bought a formerly top goalkeeper for nothing on a Bosman. I think he was freedom of contract. I would be interested to see what we do that. I had a look at Bosman's the other day, and there's not that many goalkeepers that A, I recognise, and B, I think are stand out, is because you need to be something pretty decent, pretty special to be a Rangers goalkeeper. It's not just about ability, it's about mentality. So this is a concern, Davey, not just for game to game just now as we finish up the season. It's a concern for me in terms of the recruitment and what we're thinking. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Hold your horses here, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if McGregor got another deal.
No.
Do you not think that's a possibility?
The way they're talking, of course, a possibility, but just no. The fans will go fucking apeshit. And you pardon my language, but they will.
This is a sweary pod, did he, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I can't be blamed for this. This is your Salkits upbringing. If you've been raised in a town like Corinne,
Alan's disgusted.
It's terrible. I'm shocked.
I don't blame him. Yeah. Alan doesn't. Alan folks genuinely doesn't. So he's a proper old gentleman, whereas me and Andy are just ruffians. But you can't be doing it. If he's coaching and you keep him registered for the third choice, I get that, but that would need to be spelled out. We categorically need a new goalkeeper. Because as I say, I'm fed up watching this, where it's, as I say, that should be dealt with there. It isn't, and it continues apace. Alan, further on the defence, I'm in a privileged position with Heart in Hand that I hear a lot from Rangers fans, right? Be it through messages on the site, emails, social media, etc. And one of it's always a good barometer of what Rangers fans are talking about. One of the things they're talking about at the moment is Ben Davies and his future. And it's an interesting one because nobody emails me or messages me or talks to me on social media and says, Ben Davies is shit, right? He's a terrible player. We should get rid. But equally, it's a strange one. It's almost like he's a bit meh, you know? It's not, nobody thinks he's a bad player, but nobody really kind of thinks he's that good either. He seems to be neat and tidy. He's an excellent passer of the ball. His positional sense is good, and he mops up a lot of things early. However, in one-on-ones, he's not very good. We see that at the second goal, and he's not the most commanding in the air. I kind of find it as well that I'm not. Yeah, I don't dislike him, but nor am I particularly taken with him. And I can kind of see those arguments that he's all right. You know, he's not the worst, and he's steady enough. But could we do better? Could we, sell him back down south in the summer and look for someone else? And one thing I think I totally agree with: if he needs a centre half there to hold his hand, he needs he needs a Goldson there with him to be the man in charge. And I don't know, it's a strange thing to talk about that footballers, you can play with personality. We're going to talk about Todd Cantwell. There's a player who does it. You're going to talk about Raskin. There's a player that does it. Davis just doesn't seem to do that. No, he's almost colourless.
It does. It seems a bit too quiet, like for a centre half. As you say, if you've got Connor Goldson there with him, fine. It gives you that nice wee balance on the left-hand side. But it's just, to me, you're talking even about, he's not like even a Sasa Papac, who was left-hand side quiet, but consistent, but he did. There's just something, I mentioned the indecisive stuff kind of thing, even the goal, obviously the one at Parkhead, but he's not the worst either. I mean, he had given us a lot of balance, but then in a lot of those games as well, we weren't really getting teams really coming at us too, so I don't know. For me, he might be okay as a squad player, David, but I still think we need another one to go in beside Goldson to really be so confident. strange one. And I really don't want to have a go at the guy because he's not done a lot, but as you say, like, you just can't quite put your finger on, and it would be wonderful to have the old partnerships, even if he's maybe not the most aggressive, but the two of them to play well. I don't know. I mean, I thought Helander, obviously injury-wise, but I thought Helander was that step up. But again, we never really got him fit enough, didn't we?
No, we didn't.
It's
but
often,
when we did, that
he was class, he could
league,
anticipate, yeah.
That's the thing. I think Davis's strengths, Andy, but strangely, his defending isn't the main one. And maybe with Rangers, we just need the counter argument to that is that, well, in most games, we're going to have a lot of the ball, and a guy that can use it is obviously very useful. And I do understand that to a degree. But again, when you're looking at a revamp in the summer, if you were to sell Davis, you get your money back, right? Or the guts of it. I just don't think I'd shed any tears if he headed back down the road this summer, even though, as I say, I'm not, or he's, we've got to get rid, he's a prime player. I don't know, there's no sense of permanence about him, I don't think.
Before Andy comes in, ultimately, I think we're looking at playing against Celtic or playing in top European ones, and that's where it gives me the fear, David. The vast majority of all domestic ones, fine, the two of them, but to actually get that real, and we're talking about the goalkeeper as well. We must have a really strong spine. You'll get onto up front as well, but that's the thing. Maybe a squad player, but if we could maybe get something for him, and then replaced by obviously better, that would be my choice anyway. Yeah.
Andy?
No, I think you've called it. He's not a great player. He's definitely not a bad player, and I think what we need to have is the way to judge the other centre halves apart from Goldson is, can they play, can they command, can they lead without Goldson? Now, I get the sense that Shooter can, right? I do. I think I've always thought that, take away the injury situation with Shooter, and I think we've got a real value player there for nothing. It's just the injuries is just a spectre that always hangs over him. But with Davis, what I've got is he's nice and tidy, but come the crunch, as Alan says, when you've raised the level of opposition, is he going to cut it? Because as we speak about Helander there, Helander could do that. He was a great defender at the top level, right? And you don't really play in Italy without having that in you to a degree. So I wouldn't. You've said it before, David. It wouldn't surprise me if there's a bit of trading goes on with Davis. But even if he doesn't go, I think we need to get a wee bit of mix in the 4-5 centre halves that we're going to have, because we've got Leon King in there, right? And he's developing, but he's not ready to. I mean, we'd be talking about the same things about him if he was playing as we're talking about Davis, right? So I expect he's to sign at least one other centre half, probably left-sided, who is a bit more traditional. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
and I think in answer to what you're saying about how we view Ben Davis, I think it's in our DNA to prefer a Katic over a Ben Davis, right? Now, you could argue pros and cons of both, but I think we like Katic because, he can win everything there. He's strong. He'd tackle his granny, that kind of stuff, where Davis is a wee bit more, and I hate to use the phrase culture, I can't think of another word, but he's a wee bit more thoughtful as a player.
I believe the modern term is progressive.
Oh, fucking progressive. Anyway, so
Did you swear again there, Andy?
I did. I said flip. So
when David said progressive, I thought he was talking about my favourite music, but no.
Prog rock.
Progressive rock, aye.
But the last word I was wanting to say in the centre halves is well, since Gerrard, I think when we're selecting or scouting centre halves, one of the main attributes has got to be how their use of the ball is. And I would probably question how important that is. And the reason I say that is because if you're passing it around the back, right, I expect any professional player of any degree to kind of be able to do that. It's when you get the kind of passes that Goldson does, cross-field, diagonals, the occasional fired pass into your centre forward where he's back to goal, those kind of things. I don't see that happening enough in our team to say that it's an absolute prerequisite. And I think, again, the mix of centre halves, you can have somebody that's lesser ability in that regard next to Goldson. Shooter can do it, apart from his aberration last week at Parkhead. I think he's a player that can step out and do something. So much like we're talking about the goalkeeper, it's the market we operate in. The players are going to have slight deficiencies, and the problem with Davis is that we're just seeing them when we don't want to see him. Parkhead a couple of times in Europe, and I don't know if he's going to be there long term. I think if we get the opportunity to trade, I think we'll do it.
Moving on to some of the bright spots of the match, and that was, I felt, the performances of two of the newer boys, Nico Raskin and Todd Cantwell. Early on in the match, Alan, we are awarded a penalty, and it's subsequently missed, but the fact that the way it was won was really encouraging to me. None of our midfielders that were there before the January make that burst into the box the way that Raskin did. That is new. He's brought that, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why we like him, because it's always about how can I get forward.
Absolutely. I think when I was in the flagship several months ago and we were linked with them, you look at the obligatory YouTube stuff, and I remember saying at the time, David, I watched a lot of him, and okay, it looks so comfy at the back and getting in and challenging and moving the ball, but it seemed to be this forward, play forward, like, I don't know, during Ferguson's time, if you ever watched a Man United team, practically everyone wanted to play the ball forward. And as you say, I think Raskin does that, but he's now got this, he's going into space as well. You'll get onto Todd Cantwell too, but that's so much more better, isn't it, to what we've been watching over the past couple of years? People with that ability, but having that positivity and just opening things up for us.
Absolutely. And I did enjoy his performance. There was mistakes in it. He should have done better at the second goal along with everybody else. Don't get me wrong. The first goal, sorry. But overall, I think he brings us a little bit of something. Andy Cantwell has impressed everybody. You seem to be his podiatrist, but he's a different type of player to the one I think we were expecting. And I admit I was maybe, the hair and the Instagram. I was expecting a sort of a skillful but lightweight, winger type who could be creative, would flit in and out of the game, and he's really not like that. He's a midfielder. He's not, I think, a forward. He attacks, but he'll do his shift as well, and he's involved in everything. He knits together a lot of moves. The fifth goal was exceptional, that 60 pass move. And yes, it was 60 passes, but it doesn't come about if he doesn't have that burst at the end of it to go through and then pick out the perfect no-look pass to Scotty Arfield. A great finish, but really was created by Cantwell. And yeah, I think he's a different sort of player to the one I was expecting us to get, a better one and a much more all-round one.
No, I've been really, really pleasantly surprised with him. I'm pretty much in the same space as you. I'd watched him in Norwich. He looked like a 10, a winger. I thought I would expect him to see him beating men more often. I like you, thought he was a kind of winger, a kind of Grealish type player. But he's came in, and I think the style of play and the trust that's been given to him by Beale has really landed with him. He's pretty sumptuous as a player. He's the kind of player that when he's got the ball, you feel safe and that he's not going to get away cheaply. He can hold men off, and he usually is progressive. So
learned a new word.
I know, but what happened to that fifth goal is what I'd like to. That's the only criticism I've had him. I'd like to see him do that much more often, anywhere in the park, wide or through the middle. The one thing we've kind of stopped doing, to my liking, is that we used to be very good in and around the box in terms of interchange, interplay, with the likes of Rebo and Hadji, and a couple of quick 1-2s, and we were through. We're getting better at it again, but I think he could be much more influential in that regard. And I'd like to see him attack players at the edge of the box and run into the box, because you either get a free kick or a penalty, or if you do lose the ball, then it's no necessarily as dangerous if you've lost it up the park. We should have bodies behind. So I think he's going to be an absolutely central player to us. I enjoy watching him. I really, really do enjoy watching him. I think if Raskin and Cantwell are the calibre of recruitment that Beale and whoever is left in the recruitment team have identified, then I think that we should be okay. Because the thing about Raskin that I don't know if they forget, but he's only about 21, 20.
Oh yeah,
So,
and Cantwell's only 24.
aye, so we've got, and then you add in Tillman to the mix, and you've got three really, and Hadji, if you want to include him, really exciting players with their best years ahead of them, either playing for Rangers or to give us a return. Talk about recruitment, but we've got Cantwell for, I believe, not that much money. Certainly far less than what it was
About a
valued at.
million, about $1.5 million.
Which is it's buttons, absolute buttons. I mean, they're talking about 2 or 3 million for the boy for Aberdeen, Duke, who everybody loves all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So to get him and to get Raskin for less than $1 million is really good business, and I'm enjoying watching them. This is the thing. If we didn't have them in the team just now, I think things would be a lot more flat in terms of freshness, and that familiarity breeds contempt between the support and the team, and when we've lost a bit of goodwill for everybody. I think they've changed the dynamic a wee bit since January in that regard.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, and I think that I agree with you on Cantwell. He got into the box, got his goal, lovely finish. He then, as I say, creates the fit, and the manager said that he wants numbers from him. He wants him influence. He said, "I'm going to keep on at him." He actually used that phrase. He goes, "Because I know he can do more. I see it, and I want to bring that out of him," which is good to know. But he looks comfortable as a Rangers player, and that's a big thing for anyone arriving here. And I think Raskin, you can say the same about. An interesting one, Alan, at the weekend was no Ryan Kent. And I know the cynics among you will be going, no Ryan Kent, we scored 5 goals, which, I think is a bit of a look to next season, because I don't think Kent's going to be here next season. But we then, the manager says, right, okay, I'll play the team I think we all expected. Then Sakala starts. He took Sakala off with half an hour to go and put on Rabi Matondo. And I actually asked him, was that a pre-arranged thing? Because I don't think Sakala was doing that badly. He'd scored. And he said, no, Sakala hadn't been playing that well as far as I was concerned. So I was taking him off and putting Matondo on. And he comes on and he gets a goal and an assist. Slight praise of VAR here. That's what it's for. VAR.
Yeah.
No, it's true, because, see, at the time I thought he was yards offside. Genuinely, I thought he was at least a yard. I thought it was a daylight offside. The linesman, though, keeps his flag down. Puts it up. I wouldn't have been criticising the linesman for getting that one wrong, Alan, because it was, inches, but that's what it's for. The pullback is superb, incidentally, and then Alfredo with the cleanest he's hit a ball in months. I mean, it was a perfect finish for the wee man, and we're scoring a really beautiful goal. We have to try and get something out of him. I'm not saying we'll manage it, by the way, but he's £3 million and a decent wage. We have got to try to get something out of him.
I can't remember which one, whether it was Spurs or West Ham or whatever, but I remember seeing him in front of us and Easton Cozier bombing down there, and we were just going home. And I remember us going back, and it was like, geez, we've got something really special there, and obviously for various reasons he's not. But as you say, what he did when he came on, I think that the manager mentioned that he had played a wee bit during the week as well. He's not quite up to full, kind of fitness and so on. But no, I definitely think so. As you say, David, you're spending that amount of money, he'll be on a good salary too. Why no? And I think, unfortunately, it does look as if Ryan Kent anyway, I think he's going to have offers elsewhere anyway. So we've got to try and do that. We've got to use some of the assets that we've got.
Yeah, and I think, Andy, that we're the best one in the world, with the exception of semi-final, we have the opportunity to do it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Matondo may leave Rangers in the summer and we may get a bit more money back, or he may still be here next year. The point, I did say I was on my wee tour, my no F's given tour. The point I make about Matondo is that we're far too fast to write off players. And I know he's been garbage. And I know he's had some howlers, and I know he missed a sitter at Tynecastle, whatever it was, and he's not exactly set the header alight. However, and we're talking about generations, how many times have we seen players that have come into Rangers, no settled, and have turned out to be really good Rangers players? And I refuse to believe that we cannot use him to some regard. Maybe no domestically all the time, but just because of the nature of the teams that we play. But I think in Europe, it's the kind of player that we've made. I mean, you look at what Ryan Kent's done for us over the last 4 years in Europe. it's been tailor-made for him in terms of using his pace and us playing balls in behind. And I look across the city, you're not going to tell me that the likes of Abada isn't 100 times better than Matondo, but they get a tune out of them in terms of the way they play, the way they get players in behind, or they get the wingers attacking the back post. So I've got that devilment in me, Davey, where when I see folk getting attacked, particularly Rangers players, I like to kind of back them, probably blindly, to the point where I'd love to see them prove everybody wrong. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it right, but between now and the end of the season, I would like to see him played off the left for a start. And on the Talking Ted show a couple of weeks ago, fun enough, unanimously, myself, Alex Staff, Adam, all kind of came to that same conclusion, because the final word we said on it was there's probably a better chance of better numbers of Arabi Matondo over a season than Ryan Kent. And I know that's not the be all and end all in terms of stats versus what your eyes see and ball carry and everything else, but I just think you're going to have to get somebody for that position. Sakala's another one. A lot of people wrote him off, and here he is. He's their best goal threat, and he's in and around the first choice for the front three. I just think we need to be a wee bit more optimistic around players that can give them a chance. A season isn't that long as a Rangers player, as much as we want to say otherwise.
I think we're just, as you know, we're too impatient. We always have been. You've said it. I mean, Ian Ferguson took a bit to settle. I remember McCoy's getting pelters when Mark Haitley signed, and it was like, hold on, the guy's been injured. So there's that. The biggie for me again is even this, we're talking 5-2. Again, if I had gone home and the wife would say to me, great result, and you go, but we didn't really play well, we're worried about, obviously, the problems that we've got at the back. But apart from the blinking Celtic thing, I think that's the frustrating thing. But you're right, we've got to, at least a player has got to have a number of games so that we can actually see. It's no good as well just putting them on for 20 minutes and then nothing for 4 weeks. And, you know, give them a run. And as you say, after a period of time, Andy, then by all means, look, you had your chance, it didn't work. But I mean, I'm kind of with you. I think we're too quick to kind of write people off, aren't we?
Well, he had an assist there. Sorry, Davey. He also, I mean, I've got his stats in front of me, but I remember Tynecastle had an assist.
Yeah, he did.
So the boys know. I think it's just been overblown, and I think the Ross Wilson dynamic. You never heard the word Ross Wilson without Matondo in the same sentence, and it was used as a kind of brickbat for him. But I'm an eternal optimist. I know that, but I think we've paid money for him. If he doesn't go in the summer, we've got to back the boy and we've got to let him bleed into the team. I think Van Bronckhorst's done him a disservice. I think he should have been bled into the team far more than he was.
Well, I would also argue you could say the same about Diallo,
yes,
who has gone on to have a subsequently excellent season and was clearly a better player than we saw out of him. And I'd agree with that. I think you've got to try and get something out of, and it might not work, but it's just got to be worth the effort. And I think that it was interesting to see him on the left, because for obvious reasons that Kent always starts. He hasn't had opportunities on the left. Instead, he's been playing on the right with this sort of inverted winger of coming in and having a shot. Whereas, I don't know, I just like guys on the right side. You know what I mean? I just like guys to be able to go on the outside first. Yeah, sure, cut in, but it shouldn't that shouldn't be the first, because I think you limit them then when you do that, because everybody knows what they're going to try and do, and unless you're exceptional at it, teams can defend and plan for you then. But yeah, be interesting to see where we go from here. And a wee shout out, Alan, to Alfredo Morelos. Took a lot of criticism lately, but 2 goals. And then we saw in the end the sort of running about trying to get his hat trick that we maybe haven't seen from him at other times. Look, I think it's fair to say that story's coming to an end at Rangers. But one thing that will never be in doubt is that the crowd absolutely love him.
I got pelters, David, I think, after the last flagship, because I was saying, well, he was linking up and I would still play them against Celtic, and because he did give us something, you know. But as you say, I think on Saturday we saw, and we do, when you think of what, £1 million overall, he's the most frustrating guy on earth, with the red cards early, all the stuff, the attitude and so on. But my God, do we not just love seeing Alfie scoring and that wee cheeky wee smile, eh?
Absolutely, and look, two really good goals. I loved his finish for the first one, because it came at him quite quickly and the control was excellent. And then there's something really pleasing about a guy 2 yards out, just going, fucking
Side
have
foot.
this. No, I mean, watch it.
Oh, the first
It
one, yeah.
laces through it. Second one, as you say, beautiful. Controlled, low, daisy cutter. Just perfect. Absolutely perfect finish from him. And yeah, I was glad to see him get those goals, obviously, because it helped us to get on to the victory. Andy, before we move on to the aforementioned Ross Wilson, no longer of this parish, you did have a rant on social media at the weekend, and I wanted to give you
Which
the
one?
platform. That one was about the crowds and the fact that Ibrox is, generally speaking, not exactly packed when the final whistle goes.
Davey, I'm very, very conscious that I'm on Heart and Hand. I've got a platform. I know that to a degree I represent Heart and Hand, and sometimes folk will take my opinion as a representative of the opinion of
Which is
Heart
never
and
true,
Hand.
because
It's not the
I
case.
think you're a dick.
Well, I'm not even going to argue that. So I did say I was going to be Bill Leckie, so I must be doing something right. The thing about the crowd is, right, it's not the first time I've had this thought. And I this isn't uber staunch Andy McGowan here. This is just a fact that I usually stay for 90 minutes. I've always stayed for 90 minutes at a point of principle, because I just think if I demand what I want from the club and the players in the park, the least I can do is give them the respect to stay to the final whistle. And let me tell you, 5-1 defeats at Ibrox to Celtic and all sorts, I've still done it. I've been greeting by the end of it, but I've still done it. So it's no me sitting saying, look at me, I say at the end. I just think that I thought it was over the top. I thought it was embarrassing by the end of that game, because we've got a certain view of ourselves, right? And I think as a support, we are rightly very, very proud of what we do for our club, and especially the last 10, 12 years, what we've done is kind of untouchable. We've walked the walk, and I've said that many a time. But I think we're kind of back to normality, where we've just got that wee bit of arrogant entitlement. And if I'd brought somebody to Ibrox on Saturday from down south or another country, and they've heard all about the Ibrox atmosphere and the Leipzig and the things that we applaud ourselves about, I know it's not going to be like that in a normal domestic game. The league's gone, right? But I think they would be sitting there looking round about them at 80 minutes, never mind 90 minutes, saying, hold on a minute, has there been a fire or something? Because I wonder what the players think as well, given the intensity of demands that we have. And then a lot is, and listen, if you're listening to us, listeners, and you've got a bad hip or you need to get away early because you're working, that's no who I'm having a go at here. That's going to happen. But there was about 35,000 folk out the ground for 90 minutes. And I just thought to myself, that is weird. It's a strange thing that I don't think is universal. I think it's became fairly unique to us, and it's became a habit. I can remember, Davey, folk used to sing part-time supporters as we're going to the ground. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. The 90s, yeah, absolutely.
So it's just went too far.
It's always been a thing, right? I mean, it has always been a thing. Certainly, the time I've been going, I think the transport links are a factor. It can make a difference. If you live in Glasgow, that's one thing. If you live further afield, you're maybe adding genuinely another hour and a half onto your journey. And I know that people will go, aye, so what? But it's people's weekends, and that's precious time that they don't have a lot of, to spend with family and whatnot. So I do get it. And for a lot of people, there's no getting away from it. Going to the Fitba is a social thing, and they want to get for a pint. And that, I just don't see how it changes, to be honest. And there is, of course, the ultimate argument ender. Whether you think it's right, whether you don't, does anyone have the right to tell somebody else what they can do with a ticket that they've bought? Absolutely. That's what it comes down to. So I do get where you're coming from, but equally in terms of, the realpolitik of it, is it going to stop? No. Is it something that you can really even, because people get angry when you bring this up. It's like, I'll do what I want, and that is one of the things that makes it difficult to even discuss it. There are people. See, that's the thing, right? See, if you're going to say that some people have got legitimate excuses to do it, other people will say, I don't need a legitimate excuse, in inverted commas, to do it, because I paid for my ticket. If I want to leave 5 minutes early, then damn it, I'll leave 5 minutes early. And it isn't totally unique, by the way. I've left concerts early, Andy, with 5 minutes to go. This is the last song they play. I don't mind missing it. I'll bugger off now and I'll get an earlier train and be home 45 minutes earlier.
David,
so
David, I don't want to swear. I've done it. I mean, I leave now. No, well, and what I don't like, though, is there's an implication by people that say it, even they're going away, as if they're better Rangers supporters, which is a big lot of shite I've heard. But anyway,
you hear that, Andy?
But
listen,
listen,
no.
No, but it is. I've done it. I go out these symposia.
Andy, you prick.
Maybe a couple of minutes to go. My mates are in the Copeland, and then what I'll do is, can I go and watch the last maybe minute or so on the wee screens at the Copeland? We'll walk down to the end of Paisley Road West. But for 20 years, when I was going in the car, we used to have to leave early to get a place. And then at times we would see if Rangers were 3-0 up or whatever, and the game was done. We would do it 5 minutes to go. That's it. We're going to go away and get our car. So different people, and a lot of people are travelling all over the place and they've got things. But what used to really scunner me was, so I'm like a better Rangers supporter than people who nick out with 5 minutes to go. And I just think it's a lot of pish. It's maybe a lot easier for all the guys around the Glasgow area. And not even so bad maybe for me at Wishaw and all that. But there's people all over the country. And
that's you on my list, Alan.
I don't care, Andy. Fuck your list.
Also, it should be taken into account there are people like me, Andy. I mean, I'm a recovering alcoholic, but when I was drinking, quite often I would never to get to the bar.
Yeah.
I'd be fucking choking. I'd be shaking. So no, look, I just don't see it change. I know it annoys some people, and I know it annoys some people who do it and feel that they've every right to do it. So I just the idea that you can get this group of 50,000 people behaving
to stay.
Yeah. No, just behaving one way on everything is never going to happen. These are 50,000 individuals with individual ideas, individual lives, individual plans, in place for their weekends. It just isn't going to happen. But
I knew what I was doing when I put that up, and that's why I see upset folk are putting those at a joint. I just thought, and listen, everything Alan's saying is valid. I'm not actually arguing against that. I just thought, hold on a minute, there's 35,000.
A few minutes, Andy, a few minutes, or the odd occasion where somebody's got to go away to something. But as you say, I think it is ridiculous if you've got potentially 15,000 people going away 10, 15 minutes. You
said you did it. You can't say that.
But David, no. But what I mean is, I don't mean like 10, 15,000 people all going away with 15 minutes to go or that. But people nicking out 5 minutes before and for the odd time, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Imagine Bradley in the dock.
Your Honour.
Exactly. Right, well, I mean, we'll finish up then. Ross Wilson has been the target of some ire, I think it's fair to say, this season. No longer with us. He has headed to Nottingham Forest. Rangers will look to replace the position in some form. I'm not sure it'll be a direct. I think they may change the job spec somewhat. Michael Beale is saying he's looking after things at the training ground and he's much more hands-on in recruitment, which he was in January as well. I think he prefers to be more hands-on than maybe, for example, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst did. Andy, there's been a lot of call for change, and in the last 2 weeks, new chairman, director of football leaving, the manager speaking about the squad looking quite radically different after the summer. I think that in terms of people who've been, upset, that they've kind of got what they wanted, really, and I think it leads to an exciting period for us moving forward.
Yep, and let me think what I'm going to say here, because I'm the guy I'm the conservative, and I'm saying no, director of football needs 5 years. I would have gave Ross Wilson this summer. I'll make no bones about that. But I have made point time and time again that it would probably be his last chance saloon. The changing of the chairman, I think, has a degree of influence, right? Because John Bennett was there, and I don't think he's all of a sudden his voice has been elevated. I think his voice would always been listened to anyway. So I don't know if that will make that much a difference, but I do see John Bennett as a man of vision and integrity, and I think he can look round corners. So I'm quite pleased that he's the chairman. I mean, in terms of the Ross Wilson thing, it was probably best for him to go. So the Nottingham Forest thing transpiring, even I'm like, well, this might not be for the worst thing to happen, because it takes away all the heat. There was no protest on Saturday, and as you say, Davey, in a way, everybody's got what they wanted if they wanted Wilson to go. like politics, and I think I said this in the extra last week, like politics, you're going to go through periods in football where you're not popular, and it's a case of hunkering down and getting through it and recovering the ground again, if you like. Ross Wilson was in that territory. He was going to have to recover the ground because of the ground that was lost this year in terms of goodwill. I'll be very interested to see who we get in and as a replacement. And I take note of your point there, David, that that there might be a tweak of description or role or whatever. Ross Wilson was not recruitment. That was what we judged him on, but there was a whole lot more to it than that, and that's why I always got a wee bit more leeway for me than maybe others. So, listen, I could have been wrong if I'd kept Ross Wilson and it blew up in the first 2 months of next season, then I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I have got conviction that whatever role we've got, whether it's sport director, recruitment director, we need to take a wee bit longer term views on things. We need to give people time to get it right and make mistakes, because we're not going to get perfection all the time. If we've got good people, we've got good people.
Yeah, Andy, I think that he did good work in terms of stuff like infrastructure, right?
Yep.
That we don't see, so he'll never get the credit for, and that is true. Recruitment was on his watch. The medical department was on his watch. The academy was on his watch, and I think all of those could be improved. So for me, he had done some good things, done some bad things, but I just felt that he had absolutely come to the end of his particular road at Rangers. And I think every so often we need someone coming in with fresh eyes and saying, right, let me have a look at this medical department. Let me have a look at this academy. I really genuinely believe that. Alan, it's a role that modern football clubs of our size need. A lot of our fans don't understand it because they think, as Andy says, it's purely to do with transfers, when it isn't. A lot of it is kind of technical administrative stuff that needs done. You certainly, it's not like the old days when a manager. There's great stories about Alex Ferguson. He was the guy that ordered the pies at Pittodrie. Right? That kind of stuff is no longer here. But I do think also the fact, I do take Andy's point about Wilson get judged in recruitment. He was forever banging on about I sold Bassey for this much, I sold Patterson for that much, got as our highest ever. It was in the statement when he was leaving that he did that. Whenever we signed a new player, there he was, front and centre. Not what to be seen when it went tits up, but there he was, front and centre. So no, I don't buy that argument. I think recruitment is a massive part of a director of football's overview, and I think his recruitment was pretty poor all in, to be honest.
I think he got more wrong than he did right, David. And as you say, God, I remember John Gregg had to negotiate with agents to do with a fight at Ibrox. Do you know what I mean? The money, it was ridiculous, obviously, in those days. We definitely need a sporting director anyway, or whatever they call it. But there needs to be someone
whatever the name
else.
is, it doesn't matter. But
it doesn't, no.
And also, once a manager has said, I'd like this player, then I don't want the manager wasting time, as you say, talking to agents and guys about money and contracts and stuff. So you need a guy who goes and does that. And I agree with you. Look, I don't expect any Rangers transfer summer to be 100%. We're never going to get just hit after hit after hit. It doesn't work like that. It'd be lovely if we did, but it just doesn't. But I expect better than what his hit rate was. And for me, I just think, people talk about legacies and stuff. His legacy is a League Cup final where we start with 9 Mark Allen signings. And that's a fact. He didn't really progress the squad particularly. Few of the guys he brought in really had a big effect. I think he had a propensity to be to take things that were maybe bargains in terms of coming to us. You mentioned there Helander. Why is a player as good as Helander leaving Serie A to come to Scotland? Because he's injury prone.
Kamar Roof, a number of players. If only we can get Aaron these guys Ramsey, fit, kind of thing.
You can do that once or twice. You can't do it time after time if it's blowing up in your face every single time. And yet we continued to do that. We've got players coming out of contract. We've got a midfield that up until January we just kicked down the road for 3 years. The goalkeeping situations. Look, I just think sometimes something comes along that suits everybody. and this suits everybody. I think it was time for him to go. I think it was time for Rangers to get a new guy in, and Forrest wanted him. So for me, it's just one of these perfect.
I think the manager as well, David Beale, doesn't have the bandwidth, to do all of that other stuff, especially because Beale's spending more time on the training ground even than Steven Gerrard did. So it's vital that someone else is in, as you say, on that side of the, obviously the two of them need to work really, really close together. But I think the time is right now, David, and let's hope we take our time and we get the right one in, and then we can just move forward on it.
Yeah, because people are saying, well, what about the recruitment this summer? It's very advanced. So I don't think that'll be too big an issue. Right, folks, that will do us here this week on Heart and Hand. My thanks to our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers. And of course, our shout, and please go and try out Heart and Hand on Patreon. It's a wonderful site, the best £2 a month you can spend if you're a Rangers fan. Trust me, with the amount of great content that's on there. My thanks to my two guests. First of all, to Andy.
Thanks, David. Remember, folks, stay for 90.
He's at Bob McPhail on Twitter, folks, if you wish to send him some good-natured ribbing or some
It was good-natured, I must say that. I ended up having a good laugh with folk.
Yeah, because Alan wants to punch your head in. And Alan Bradley.
Sorry, Alan's away to get his tea. He left 5 minutes ago. No, thanks. I enjoyed it, and apologies for the language, David.
Thanks for listening, folks. Cammy will be back with you on Wednesday or Thursday with this week's Heart and Hand Extra previewing our trip to Pitaudry. And I will, of course, be back here next week to reflect on it. So until then, have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you again soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.